Brett Tolman knows him. So Brett was kind enough to join us from Hawaii, the beautiful island of Kauai, which is my favorite Hawaiian island. There's Brett, living large. I mean, living large. 6 hours behind me as we speak, taking the time out to talk to us about the news. So what about the acting attorney general? What do you think?
You know, Matt is very interesting. He's not shy about his opinions. One thing in particular, I've had discussions with him. I know he's been very public about how incensed he was over the handling of the Hillary Clinton emails and the lack of investigative integrity on that investigation. I think if it had been him in charge, I think there's a criminal investigation immediately on the issue of the emails and the server.
Now, the left-wing press hates Whitaker because of that and because he had demonstrated some skepticism about the Russian collusion special prosecutor thing. Do you know what that skepticism was?
Yeah, I think Matt is very analytical. He's a football player, but, don't be fooled by that. He is very analytical. And so he looks very deep into the facts. And I think he's critical of that investigation because of a lack of transparency in it so far. I would venture a guess that to Matt doesn't like to see politics in the investigation itself, and I think that's been pretty prevalent.
Okay, but now the hate Trump people, left-wing commentators say, look, the fix is in, because Mr. Whitaker, he doesn't like the Russian collusion probe, so he can be more skeptical of it. And he's gone on the record as saying the Hillary Clinton email situation was booted by the FBI. So he's a partisan for Trump. He'll help Trump. Any validity to that?
Well, I think Matt will certainly understand that the president gets to set his agenda. Now, when it comes to the investigation, it's all still on Rosenstein, whether he's going to stay and insist on staying in charge, or whether or not Matt will take that back. Traditionally, an acting attorney general doesn't mess with positions very often. Tries to keep a status quo until the president makes the formal nomination.
All right, so it's not a slam dunk that Whitaker takes the investigation away from Rosenstein, who's supervising it now. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I thought Whitaker immediately, because he is the superior there, he's running the Justice Department, would oversee it, but he doesn't have to. That'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Chris Christie, if I had to go to Vegas, I'm putting my money on him. How fast that will happen, I don't know. Do you know Christie, and what do you think about him?
I do. Yep, I worked with Chris Christie. We were on on the Attorney General's Advisory Committee, where we advised the Attorney General at the time when we were U.S. attorneys. I followed his career. We have a good relationship. He's certainly a lot more political. He had to become such, becoming the governor. I don't think Christie's afraid to make some really tough decisions. If he gets the nomination, I think you would very quickly see a resignation from Rod Rosenstein. And I think that you would see somebody very, very aggressively attempting to put that issue to bed.
But what if he's in a tank, though, for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think we certainly don't have all the answers on this, but I do know that, he was at the White House today. I think there are some serious discussions, and Mueller, my guess is Mueller wants to try to get something out very, very quickly, given how the landscape. Yes.
Yeah, he has to get something out. When you say he was at the White House today, you're talking about Chris Christie?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that. But you in Kauai, all right, 5,000 miles away, know more about this than I do. Now, I knew, I have to confess, that they wanted Christie, and I said that yesterday.
Yes.
But I didn't know he was there today. So
the former U.S. attorneys are kind of a tight-knit group. We
know everything, right? Well, if that's the case, then I'm sure lunch was upgraded. Little jest there. Okay. The Justice Department very quietly has to oversee the Department of Homeland Security and this migrant caravan stuff, all right? Because if there are prosecutions at the federal level, they go into the Justice Department, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's interesting, and you're go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. It's interesting. You go.
Your opening was really highlighted something remarkable. Prior to Obama, it really was the practical rule that you had to get to a port of entry. That really got laxed over the last many years, and now it's going to be articulated by the president, who I think certainly does have authority to do so.
There's no doubt that he does. Okay, so you as a former U.S. attorney, when someone comes to America illegally, and that's what this DACA thing is all about. They're not here with credentials and paper. And a woman gives birth, that person immediately becomes an American citizen under the 14th Amendment. The president making noise now that he's going to try to change that. He'd have to do it through an executive order because the Democratic House is never going to pass that. Do you see a problem constitutionally from your perch as a former U.S. attorney with the president saying no more anchor babies?
I do. Unfortunately, unlike the setting up the system and how someone comes in and gets asylum, where those are all the executive branch really does set how that happens. The 14th Amendment is very clear. If you're here and you're subject to jurisdiction, and people are right now, many of my conservative colleagues are saying, well, that means there's a gray area, there's an opening, so the president can do this. And I disagree with it, and this is why. We have long held that when they come here illegally or legally, that we subject them to our jurisdiction, meaning I could prosecute them as a U.S. attorney for crimes that they commit, even though they weren't citizens.
And they have a right to an attorney. They have a right to a court-appointed attorney. They have all the constitutional rights that a citizen would have in any kind of criminal beef. So I said, number one, I don't think that President Trump's even going to sign that executive order. I think he was saber-rattling before the election. I think you're going to see them back away from it because they know that the Supreme Court wouldn't upheld that. But the reason is a different reason. I don't think the Supreme Court is going to rule on what the 14th Amendment says because everybody knows that's a ruse now. The 14th Amendment was there to protect slaves. That's why it was written. Nobody envisioned it would be used as a ruse and a con for people coming here illegally to harvest American citizens. Nobody thought about it. But the Supreme Court is loath to give the executive branch, the president, more power. And if the president had the power to take any constitutional amendment, anyone, all right, and change the meaning of it. Second Amendment. If you had a liberal president and they said, a well-regulated militia, which is the Second Amendment, knocks out individual rights to possess firearms, you could make that same argument. I think you'd lose it, but I don't think the Supreme Court wants to go down that road.
Oh, I think you are hitting it exactly right, because the Second Amendment would be the first one that a liberal president would come in and say, look, it happened under Trump. We amended 14th. We're now going to amend the second. This is what it means. We're going to do it through executive order rather than a constitutional amendment.
Now, if Congress, and again, this is not going to happen now because of the Democrats controlling the House, but if the Republicans win the House and the Senate in 2020 and Donald Trump's reelected, and they go in and they change the law about anchor babies, they write a specific law, then I think the Supreme Court would have a better chance of saying, okay, the law has been written by Congress, and now we're going to carve out that law because the 14th Amendment was abused. I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think some have argued that it really just requires a constitutional amendment. I don't agree with that. I think the president, and I'm not sure he's doing this, but maybe you agree with me. I think he's not really intending on signing an executive order. I think he wants Congress to do something. And it's been decades since they've tried and failed. But I think you're accurate, Bill. I think
Yeah,
that
they
if
won't do it
Congress
now, though.
specifically.
Yeah, now
Right. No, I think they
everything
won't, but if
grounds
they
to a halt
specifically-
now. Right.
Yes.
Right. Well, Brad, I want you to enjoy yourself out there. Mahalo. Again, Kauai, for those of you who are traveling to Hawaii, most beautiful of the islands. I mean, they're all beautiful. They're all fabulous. I love Hawaii, even though it's crazy left. Oh, by the way,
Yes.
Brad, if you see Maisie, you see Senator Maisie,
Yes,
just tell her hello from me.
I will. I'll have some
Yeah.
words with her.
Tell her I want due process, though. Have a few words with her. All right, Brad. We'll talk soon. Thanks very much. We appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Bill.